Lesson 5.4, Ratio and Rate. Our vocabulary words today are ratio, rate, and unit rate. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers. For example, it might be a comparison of girls to boys in a class. So there might be 3 girls to 5 boys. It can be written using the word to. It can be written with a colon, or it can be written as a fraction. A rate is a ratio comparing different kinds of measures. The key word there is that they are different kinds of measures. So for example, I might have a rate of 200 students on 5 buses. The two rates, or the two units that we're talking about, are buses and students. So here's one and here's the other. A unit rate would be taking the same information, and it would be a ratio that compares a quantity to one. So if we use the example above, here, I would want to know how many students are on one bus. I do that by dividing 200 divided by 5, and I would end up getting 40 students on one bus. That would be the unit rate. Now, here's a word problem that we're going to try and find some ratios for. We will do the first two together, and then I will save the last two for you to do on your own. At CCA, there were 112 girls and 80 boys in the 8th grade. There are 12 teachers teaching 8th grade. Find the following ratios, and remember we need to simplify them. We're going to do all of the ratios right now as fractions. So if we look for the ratio of girls to boys on number 1, we can see that we have 112 girls and we have 80 boys. So the ratio of girls to boys would be 112 over 80. And then you need to simplify your ratio. You can use a factor ladder to simplify it, or you can just figure out what numbers go into 112 and 80. If I use the factor ladder, and I have 112 and 80, I divide by 2. 2 goes into 112. 2 goes into 112 56 times. 2 goes into 80 40 times. Continue, divide them both by 2. 2 goes into 56 28 times. 2 goes into 40 20 times. Divide them by 2. 2 into 28 is 14. 2 into 20 is 10. Divide them by 2. 2 goes into 14 7. And 2 goes into 10 5. So the simplified fraction is 7/5. So this would be equal to 7/5. All right, now we need to do students to boys. First, you need to figure out how many students there are altogether. We do that by adding up the number of girls and boys. So we take 112 girls plus 80 boys, and we get 192 students over 80 boys. And then from there, we need to simplify our fraction. If you simplify 192 over 80, we can divide by 16, and the answer will come out to 12/5. Now you could have used a factor ladder, or you could just find common factors that go into each one. Okay, I would like you to pause the video and find out the ratios for boys to teachers as well as from students to teachers. Okay, so for number 3, we have 80 boys to 12 teachers. If you simplify that, 6 goes into both of those. 4 goes into both of those. You end up with 20 over 3. In number 4, if it's students to teachers, it's 192 to 12, and 12 goes into both of those numbers, and you end up with 16 to 1. So the ratio of students to teachers is 16 to 1. Okay, now let's use a word problem to see if we can find the rate and the unit rate. It says a car traveled 210 miles in 4 hours. So how do we find the rate? We write 210 miles over 4 hours. And now we need to do the unit rate. In order to do the unit rate, you take 210 and you divide it by 4. If you end up taking 210 and divide it by 4, it comes out to 52 miles per hour. It can be written that way, or the miles per hour could be written as mph. It's actually 52.5 miles per hour, and you can see that by doing 4 goes into 210, 4 goes into 21 5 times, subtract, you're left with 1, bring down the 0. 4 goes into 10 2 times, which is 8, subtract, you're left with 2. And if we do 2 over 4 and reduce it, it becomes 1/2, and 1/2 as a decimal is 0.5. Okay, here's the last problem. I'd like you to pause the video and please write the rate and the unit rate. Okay, so the rate is $288 for 6 hours of work, and the unit rate would be found by doing 288 divided by 6, which comes out to $48 per hour. That concludes the video. Please make sure you take notes on anything that you don't understand so that we can answer those questions tomorrow.